In this video, we're doing another example of graphing conjunctions on a number line. And remember that a conjunction is just two separate inequalities put together into one inequality. So here's our first example. We have 5 less than x less than 10. So these are two inequalities here smashed together in one inequality. What we can do is separate this inequality into two different ones so we can look at them individually. So at first we take this left-hand side here and we say 5 is less than x. Well, 5 less than x, 5 less than x, is the same thing as x greater than 5. If we take the right-hand side of this inequality, we see x less than 10, x less than 10, and we can also say 10 greater than x. So this is one inequality here represented in two different ways, and this is a second inequality here represented in two different ways. But both these inequalities have been taken and put into one inequality, which tells us 5 less than x less than 10. So if we want to graph this conjunction on a number line, we can look at each of these separately. So we know in this one, x is greater than 5, or 5 less than x, same thing. But x is greater than 5 is a little easier to think about. So if x is greater than 5 and it's not greater than or equal to, we draw an open circle at 5 because 5 is not included in this inequality. X is just greater than 5, so we draw an open circle at 5, and then we draw an arrow out to this way. So x is all the values greater than 5 according to this first inequality here. If we look at the second inequality, we see x is less than 10, or 10 greater than x. It's a little easier to think about x less than 10. Remember that it's usually always easier for us to think about whichever inequality has x coming first. So here x comes first, so we say x greater than 5, and here x comes first, so we say x greater than 10. It's usually easier for us to think about those than it is to think about these other inequalities where x comes second. So that's why I like to think about those ones. So here, x less than 10, it doesn't include 10, so we draw an open circle at 10 here, and then x is everything less than 10, which means everything to the left of 10, all the numbers that are less than 10. So we've drawn both inequalities separately. The conjunction of these two, or this whole inequality we were given originally, is where these two separate inequalities overlap. So if we want to graph the conjunction 5 less than x less than 10, we want to graph only the values where these two lines are overlapping with each other, which means we're not going to include 5 and we're not going to include 10, but we're going to include everything in between, because x has to be less than 10, x has to be greater than 5, but it can be anything in between these two. So this blue graph here then is the graph of the conjunction 5 less than x less than 10. Let's do another example here. We have -4 less than or equal to x less than 1. Let's pull this apart into two separate inequalities. This is the conjunction of two inequalities. If we look at the left-hand side here, we can say -4 less than or equal to x. Remember, it's always easier to think about the inequality that starts with x, so we want to flip this around and say x greater than or equal to -4. Now we want to look at the right-hand side over here, and it says x less than 1. So we can say x less than 1. We know that's the same thing as 1 greater than x, but we really want to look at the inequalities that start with x, which are going to be these two right here. Start with x and start with x. And so then we're going to call this the first inequality, and we're going to call this the second inequality. They're formed as a conjunction in this larger inequality here. So the first one, x greater than or equal to -4. So we need to find -4 on our number line. That's right here, -4. And we want to say x is greater than or equal to -4. Well, because we have that or equal to, that means we want to include -4. So we're going to draw a solid circle here, a solid point, and we want to say x can be everything greater than or everything to the right of this point, so we want to draw a line this way. Now we look at our second inequality, x less than 1. We want to go ahead and find 1 on the number line. That's this point right here. And because it's not x less than or equal to 1, it's just x less than 1, we don't include 1 in our line. So we draw an open circle at 1 like this, and then because x is less than, we're looking for all the points to the left of or less than 1, so we draw this line like this. Now the whole point here is to graph the conjunction, so we want to graph all the points where these two overlap. So that's going to be including -4 here, including -4, excluding the point here 1, but it is going to include everything in between -4 and positive 1. And that makes sense to us because if we look at our conjunction here, x is everything greater than or equal to -4, so greater than -4 or equal to -4, and less than +1, so +1 less than +1. So we've graphed our conjunction here in blue.